Hello, welcome to the world of Word.
Coming up, another word in your attic.
And if you enjoy this, visit our Patreon to find out more about our exclusives and our general work of national importance.
The link is in the notes below. And now, on with the show.
Word in your attic, a Zoom with a view.
Okay, well, welcome to another edition of Word in Your Attic. And we are absolutely thrilled to be joined by the writer and recording artist who we met back in my case, back in my days at the NME in the late 1970s. Fantastic to see you. Gavin Martin, welcome. Welcome aboard.
Hey,
Tremendous.
Yeah.
And are we talking to you in, I think you live in St Leonards-on-Sea, is that right?
Absolutely.
That's where you are now, right?
That's actually correct. Yeah. Yes, just quite near to the Hastings Pier, where the Rolling Stones played in August 23, 1964, and Polly Starring saw the Sex Pistols July the 3rd, 1976.
That's
so
right.
that's that. But they don't have live bands there. Well, they don't have live bands anywhere at the moment, do they? But
No, that's true.
So it's. But the Hastings Pier is just down here, and the sea. Yeah, it is. Oh yeah, I've moved up.
Yeah.
What a great time! What a great place to be locked down. So were you still going up and going? I don't know, swimming every day, and all that kind of stuff?
I've been swimming this morning. In fact, yeah, I try to go every day. That's why I'm at the sea. I lived, brought up by the sea. Born in Belfast, moved. Thankfully, moved to Ballyholme early in my life, like 2, and so I was going to go back to the sea. London was great, but there was no sea, and
Right.
Key factor.
All creatures go back to the sea, including Gavin Martin. That's
absolutely, yeah.
It's evolution.
For sure, yeah.
Well, yeah, you're very fortunate you got that during this particular period, because
Definitely.
Mark and I are going stir crazy being in London suburbs, where the amount of views doesn't vary very much,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I long to see the sea or to see a body of water or whatever. I'd love to do that. Really
I've only
good.
been out 3 or 4 times, and one time I was up on the South Downs, and we could see the sea in the distance, and it was absolutely thrilling.
It's
drink it in,
emotional, isn't it?
You've no idea. We feel a bit imprisoned up here.
Its appeal, each day, friend. It's a wonderful thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But I remember first meeting you, and I suppose I would have been about, 22, 23, and you were probably a teenager actually still, and it was at the Pound in Oxford Street in Belfast, and there was a group, I was for my sins covering a group called Advertising.
Absolutely.
The NME, and you were already writing for the NME, and you were telling me about Rudy, who were and various other bands. I can remember it distinctly.
I think just shortly after that, I went to London for 3 weeks in the summer with Rudy, slept in a van, and the first port of call was a person who'd been corresponding with our fanzine, and she wasn't in. There was a big house in Golders Green, and Dave Angry then became Dave McCulloch. She was in when he called, and as far as I know, they're still together. So,
right, an amazing story.
Sliding doors. Yeah.
So no, Dave Angry holds marriage together for 40 years. That's a headline.
What are the chances?
Before we move off the subject of the seaside, Gavin, I don't know if you remember, I was only thinking about it today. You and I spent a last weekend at the seaside, didn't we? Many years ago. Am I ringing a bell?
Absolutely, yes. An unforgettable weekend. Yes.
We had a weekend at Asbury Park, New Jersey, didn't we? I don't know what year we're talking about. In the middle of the 80s, it must have been.
485, yeah.
Which presumably indicates the subject matter.
Well, it was actually Southside Johnny who had an album out. And I think Gavin must have been doing it for the NME, and I was there for Whistle Test, because I think Mike Appleton rather hoped Bruce Springsteen was going to show up.
Yeah,
bump into it.
But we had a mad weekend. When I think of my lost weekends on kind of rock and roll jaunts, that's foremost in my mind, because there was a whole bunch of us. There were actually stretch limousines, weren't there? There was stretch limousines.
There was a notable upgrade in the hospitality quotient to what we meager rock scribes were used to as a result of the TV being involved. I think, yeah, we had a limo to take us around New York as well, and
we did. There was terror. There was some bad behaviour went on that weekend. Nothing too injurious or anything by standards, but you know, I often think of that. I often think we spent. Was it Labour Day? It's one of those American festivals. I think it was
the music on the beach is just the greatest thing, isn't it? And he was a lovely chap, old
yeah. And we spent the weekend pretty much under the boardwalk down by the sea.
Yeah.
You know, drinking
on
beer.
A blanket.
On a blanket with my baby.
Absolutely.
That's where I'll be.
It was that come to life.
Anyway, sorry, I just wanted to mention that while we stayed on.
So have you had a chance to dig out any old odds and ends that you might be listening to or looking at?
I haven't seen it. Yeah, seen one of these before. It's 7 inches, except when it's 5. So that recorded 1964.
That's what a 5-inch. Did you say
5-inch record?
5-inch.
Was that for some kind of jukebox or something?
It's one of those booths they had in train station.
Oh, yeah.
Bangor train station. So it's me wibbling with my father holding my hand, just singing nursery rhymes, really.
Oh, that's pretty That's
brilliant.
I've had it digitized. It's very crackly, and it's like poems about I am the butcher, choppity chop. I am the baker, and just nonsense. And quite Belfast accented because we just moved from Belfast. But
right,
yeah. So that.
I've never seen a 5-inch record before.
That's fantastic.
But apparently, prior to this, and this was really killed by the cassette. Apparently, which is funny. About 1972, they stopped, which was when I got my first press button cassette. Music cassette recording. They used to be aluminium prior to this happening in the 60s. But yeah, so that was about the first sort of record I made, but in the house, the stuff that we were listening to, there's 2 sisters, my little sister, my big sister, and I have a brother in care, which kind of it coloured my musical life, I think, as well. But certainly the excitement in the front room was from stuff like this. And this,
fabulous.
This like 4, 5, 6. You weren't going to be going to. My sister had seen the Stones in the ABC in Belfast, and her admiration for the Stones is all over the sleeve of this, which I think has become detached from Satisfaction, but it's an EP inside here, but it's not the right thing. But it's all her love for the Stones. But on this, I just saw this last night. It says Stones forever and ever, and thus it has proved. This is a 13-year-old girl in '64. Yeah, so that was.
I wonder if anybody ever took a Jerry and the Pacemakers EP in 1964 and wrote on the back of it, Jerry and the Pacemakers forever. Yeah, the foremost.
Isn't it the story? Jerry Marsden. Somebody went to do a feature on him and the records he had, and he only had his own records.
That's it.
Any records at all. Yeah.
It's like those people who only choose their own records for Desert Island Discs. You think, surely this is wrong, you know?
No, I've got a lot of time for people that do that. There aren't many people who got the nerve to do that.
Yeah.
I like
that. No. And I thought I just remembered that this the cover of this book, which
what?
Oh,
now
yes.
Now, I've had probably several issues of this. I don't think this is the.
I'm going to say, is that the original? Well, it possibly is the original.
The original, I remember all the pages fell apart because it was so.
Fell out.
Yeah.
And the story is the artist Guy. I'm not.
Hellart.
Hellart.
Guy.
Hellart.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll take your pronunciation.
Around the time that. Around the time the book came out, Jagger had seen it and told Bowie that we got him to do our new album cover.
Yeah.
And Bowie said, "Oh, it looks great," and he got Diamond Dogs out before it's
slightly before it's only a rock and roll.
Yeah,
I never thought of that.
I think that's the chronology and the story that it was mixed.
Oh, really?
How very Bowie that is. What a wheeler dealer. What a chancer.
That just shows how pathetically competitive rock stars are at absolutely every level. If they can score points, if they can spoil the day of one of their rivals, they're absolutely
They're go to bed happy. Yeah.
Like Roger Waters, I interviewed him, after the live get together, and there was still talk of a Floydian rapprochement that might, lead to bigger things. So there was
Floydian rapprochement.
But he did insist in calling his opposite in Pink Floyd Dave, and you don't call him Dave, do you? You call him David. I mean,
he changed his name officially to David, and he got very, very pissed off.
Oh, that's wonderfully bitchy. Yeah. Oh, that's great. I love that. See, you can't mess with a diminutive, It's like the footballer Andy Cole. Do you remember when he decided he wanted to be Andrew Cole? Right. He spent about 2 years trying to convince the world to call him Andrew Cole. It wasn't taking at all.
Have we bought the concept of David Jensen? I'm not sure if we had. Well, is he always Kid Jensen? Probably.
Oh, people of a certain age, that's certainly the case. Yeah. No, that's brilliant. No, we found it. As we've been doing these, we've had a few copies of Rock Dreams, the Guy Pellat and Nick Cohen book. So it's amazing how influential that whole thing was,
Well,
in the kind of creation of rock mythology.
I had one of the iron-on transfers you'd put on a T-shirt. It would a bit precarious, bit burnt because I hadn't ironed it on properly, but of the cover. Image.
Yeah.
It was an early kind of a bit of rock and roll T-shirtery.
You had to do it yourself in those days.
Absolutely, yeah. So I have got So music was a bit of a fascination early on, but on the street where I lived, my cousin was down visiting from Belfast, and he had a neighbour, a contemporary of his. He was like 15, 16, and he was down staying in our street in a bed and breakfast with his family, and he's walking up the street, and his childhood memory passed on, and I'm there as the 4 or 5 year old kid, and he says, "Hi, Geordie. Hi, Billy. How you doing?" And they just went on. And my mum goes, "Who's that, Billy?" He said, "Oh, don't you know who that is, Auntie Peggy? That's George Best. He's going off to be a very famous footballer. And this would have been 64 or whatever." So, because my cousin was like the coolest guy in town as far as I was concerned, George Best became a fascination. And I did get to meet George Best.
Oh, that's sensational.
Years.
Now, how old would you have been at the time?
About 4 or 5.
Amazing.
When I met him, 30 whatever years later, and we, it was my ex was interviewing him, and we spent some time afterwards talking, and he seemed like quite bright guy, and it was we had an exchange, and so I brought up my story, and the look he gave me when I asked him if he had any recall of this, said, "Do you have any idea where I have been, what I have done? I think I'm going to remember."
Oh,
that was good.
I admire that honesty, because normally people go, "Oh yes, I've seen, yes, I do." Yeah.
Paul McCartney would have said, "Yes, I've seen."
He would have gone absolutely unforgettable.
Never forget. Yeah. Although, to be fair, footballers never forget a game that they played in ever, do they? You can quote a game from 1968. They'll tell you what half they scored in and all that kind of stuff. They can remember.
So they say it completely different to everybody else, I guess. 1968 and all that. But so that was a bit of the George Best fascination. I was sort of like, and I was massively into football, and as far as I was concerned, I was going to become a footballer. Well, why would you want to be anything else? It looked like a great life from the perspective of George Best, but it was pointed out to me I couldn't actually play football, so find another. So I think the first music is still ticking along. I think the first full price single I bought was Cat Stevens' "Can't Keep It In," and I think the first sort of single that almost was full price, but was a bit of a reduction, was the Stones' Tumbling Dice, which I think was a 2 tracks on the B side.
Oh, possibly. Yes, it was, wasn't it?
You
So
know, the story, it was all
1972.
very difficult to get music in those days, not like nowadays, the internet. So you record the shitty transistor, you record stuff off that and that. Is like the back of the NME used to be able to send away a $5 and get 100, 200 singles, just a job lot of jukebox singles. And yeah,
they were ex-jukebox, weren't they?
Well, yeah, and a lot of, like, you know, second string stuff like the blues.
Yeah, rubbish, but yeah,
Yes.
there might be some good stuff.
Unsold.
But you know, apparently, you know, you could also get a gem, and this this came into my life after, you know, I got to, you know, Highway 61 had been a big record for me. I got to hear that. I couldn't believe it. I had the cassette recorder was strapped on the back of the bike, and I had to go around the neighborhood kind of, you know, proselytize it. It looks to me as the music you've ever heard. And then I got this came out of one of those boxes, which is, I don't know if you say Blue Verve. It's,
What's the record going?
Mothers of Invention.
Mothers of Invention. So amongst your 100 singles.
So did you know you were going to get that? Was that just
you got to
no. And I had, I mean, it was a life-changing record in terms of, like, Dylan, you've got a you know, a distance, a knowingness of the thing, but these guys, I mean, I didn't realize at the time that it's produced by the, say, great Tom Wilson. But
Tom Wilson, it was, wasn't
yeah,
it? That's good.
Yeah, and of course the B side is equally brilliant. Who are the Brain Police, and completely different dynamically to the A side. So that was, yeah.
I love that. I love the idea of that turning up amongst 100 singles.
Oh,
and what a shock you must have got listening to it. Yeah. That's incredible.
That's the beauty of a single. That's the great thing about a single. That's
absolutely magic. Yeah, and it's
so when did you...
longer version of it. So this is like 2:28, but fuck it blasts. Yeah, takes you to...
What was the first LP you bought? Can you remember that?
The first album I bought, that's a good question. I probably, the first purple Ronco record, which had Atomic Rooster on it, Morning Has Broken, Buffy, Saint, and Joan Baez cover of...
The Night They Drove Up Dixie Down.
Terrible fidelity, because they was really packed in with it.
They're really well, awful sound, those records.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant combination, though. I love those samplers where you kind of, via Atomic Rooster, you discover Joan Baez. You know, that's how it ought to be. It's brilliant.
Yeah, so music became a bit of an accelerating fascination, and I had to get more music. And one of the things I did was start writing into newspapers, so forth. The Sun Pop column was probably where I first was published, which was a letter. In 1976, all the Beatles singles were reissued on green labels, green sleeves. A series of, you know, they released them chronologically again. And I wrote a sucky letter to John Sadler's Pop column to say that, you know, hopefully this will inspire the youth of today. I mean, I was about 12, 13. Hopefully it will inspire the youth of today to be similarly imaginative with their pop records. And, you know, 12 months later, punk. But I got, I won a copy of Tom Waits's Nighthawks Diner.
12-year-old.
Esoteric stuff for a 12-year-old. Rushed home, Mum and Dad, listen to this. Yeah.
Listen to this. I think the opening line is "Welcome to another nocturnal emission," isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, that's John Peel. John Peel obviously was a big person to hear music through. I always remember wanting to hear this record, which was commonly quoted as the first ever rock and roll record, Jackie Brenson's Rocket 88, which is Ike Turner, really. And finally, it was played by John Peel, and you know, so I finally heard rock. And he said, Jackie Brenson, Rocket 88. I always wanted a Rocket 88, but I had to make do with a slightly curved 5.5 inches. So that was Mr. Peel under the bedsheets. Around this time, Belfast had become a nightmare. So I was really pleased to be living in Ballyholme. But of course, Belfast, you know, if anybody was going to come and play, Belfast where it was. Chuck Berry came to play Belfast in the middle of a curfew, ABC Cinema, where my sister had seen the Stones. And well, I was too young to go. So my dad chaperoned me. I drove back from work from Belfast, drove back. My dad really helped me get to see lots of music. He was a great facilitator. Anyway, so Chuck Berry is playing in a pretty empty ABC Cinema because nobody at the other side of Belfast can get there because there's a curfew. First 3 rows, really, we've all moved forward. And at one point he asked for requests. My dad's fallen asleep, very tired. And I'm standing there saying, going, play Maybelline! And he goes, there's a guy here, can't have been born when this song was written. So we're going to play Maybelline for him. Fast forward 22, 23 years, however many years, Chuck Berry's bringing out his autobiography. I wanted people interviewing him, 10 minutes, every question. Sorry? And you have to repeat it. So he's really limiting your time. But at the end of it was only for a small piece anyway. Well, turned out because he wouldn't talk for it. But I got him to sign his autobiography, and he did a little Chuck picture there.
Lovely.
Oh, right.
And I said to him, I saw you playing Belfast 1970, whatever, and you played a song for me. And he goes, oh, I remember you. You were in the second row. I actually was in the second row. He's either brilliantly making this up, like one of those sort of fairground scamsters.
George Best, take note. Yeah, that's wonderful.
You owe me money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he would do. He would do. I went to see Chuck Berry in 1963.
Your first gig, wasn't it, Dave? Was it
first gig?
Yeah.
Yeah, and me and a mate wrote off to him, stamped address envelope, all that, to the theatre beforehand to get the autograph.
Right.
Didn't expect to hear anything. And like 2 weeks later, after the show, posted from somewhere else on the tour, I got the autograph written on, being Chuck Berry, written on the back of my letter. So he written
so you didn't have to use up any paper.
Very, very nice autograph. And I found it again it must have been about 15, 20 years ago. And I thought, I better put that somewhere safe.
Wow.
It's somewhere in one of those records behind me. I put it in. And every time I get a record out, I was going like this, thinking Chuck Berry's autograph is eventually going to flutter out. It hasn't done yet.
How different nowadays. I did an event with a 70s rock star, and we arrived there, and somebody knew that he was arriving, and they'd sent a letter asking for him to send an autograph. They wouldn't do it. He said, you know, it ends up on eBay or something. That Chuck Berry sending his signature out.
Well, yeah, well, eBay wasn't thought of in those days. Wasn't thought of as having a value, you know. And no, I was surprised he did it actually, because he was such a bad old sod.
I'm amazed.
He did.
The only time I saw him, he genuinely did go off mid-song, which was at Alexandra Palace. I mean, as people said he would do. You know, literally looked at his watch and thought, "That's it, I'm off. I've done it in 45 minutes."
I saw him at I've got a New Orleans Jazz Fest T-shirt on, but I've been twice, and the first time I saw him play, and he did come out with the line. Hey, he just come out of jail, and he did come out with the line. Let me tell you about myself. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be anywhere. Which I'm Keith Richards probably taken it probably from George Burns originally, but And another thing that I did to further my record collection was I don't know if you remember Emperor Rosco.
Oh, certainly do.
Saturday morning, 10 to 12. I did you record a whole show. He did a rock and roll special. You had a sort of a primer on rock and roll, and there was an item on the show called Countdown Gold Mine, if I'm remembering correctly. I used to have a cassette tape of it, long since gone to history. But the first week, I've gone into Bangor with my mates and came home, and Mum said, "Where have you been?" Well, just in Bangor. "Do you know who called here?" "No." "The BBC." So I thought, fuck, what have I done wrong? Oh, yeah, right. I'd written a letter into the Hotline Goldmine, and I wasn't in when they called. Obviously, my mum had been given the fear instead, and they said they'll phone back next Saturday. So in those days, I used to be one of these people who would come home at Tuesday, 1 o'clock. The charts, you had to know everything about it. Yeah. I knew, I knew the new releases and stuff. So it was going to be a breeze for me. And it was the week, it can be dated this quite easy. It was the week that the Bay City Rollers released Remember. The singer sang a song we used to sing along, Remember, that one. And so before he played the first, I came on the radio before he played the first thing. I got it, and he goes, you got the jackpot. My producer's standing here, and he's shaking. He can't believe it. Would you like to say hello to anybody? Yeah, I'd like to say hello to my big sister in England. And what's your big sister called? Sharon? Jan! All right! And so you didn't actually win the top 10 singles as they advertised. What you got was a £5 record token. So that was 2 albums or 10 singles. And I bought Band on the Run.
Cool. That's a great record. What a fabulous record that is.
Yeah, it really is a fabulous record. And then many years later, I was in The Great Escape, which is, I think, in LA Records, and 99 cents Court and Spark, American edition, which is different. It's
nicer. It's nicer.
Textured cover.
Yeah. And embossed,
It's a different label. And it's a white label, but it is one of the a great. I just thought
it is the idea that there was a time, we have to be reminded of this, when you could go and buy copies of Court and Spark vinyl for 99 cents because people didn't want them because they've been replaced by CD. And nowadays people pay 30 quid for things like that perfectly happily. It's extraordinary.
And around that time, the amount of Elton John albums you could find from the period when he was accounted to have, be responsible for 2.5% of all records. You think a lot of them were obviously locked up in a warehouse in LA because here they all are for 90 cents.
Yeah, a lot of copies of Rock of the Westies and things like that would have ended up at 99 cents, I'm sure. That's extraordinary. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So what after that? Where we got to in your life?
So my brother, as I was in care, died 1975, but a lot of protracted illness, a long period of time, and this record chronologically.
Neil Young.
Played to death, and this is the original issue. It was £2.65, and I never thought about it at the time, but it is such an album of grieving and certainly ambient food. And that is Neil's signature in 1992, and which he explained to me that, which I knew anyway, that this. You see, this is that the inside of the record.
Oh, right, yes, of course.
Is the inside of the
the umbrella.
God, I used to love that sleeve. It was so magical. The car buried in the sand.
The thing about it, what that attracted me, I don't know if many people the same thing, was that it was the first record that I had ever seen being re-reviewed in the NME. Steve Clark reviewed it quite sniffily, said it was not very good, and Ian MacDonald, who was a major kind of like a priest of rock criticism. The next took a page to excoriate him, and well, not excoriate Steve Clark personally, the Enemy in their funny little way at the end of his, very impassioned broadside had a little bracket with "piss off, Steve Clark" at the end of his.
Oh God! Dear, oh dear, oh dear! It's extraordinary.
Yeah. And then, so that was a big record, and then, punk rock happened, and graffiti was very important in furthering my my next stage of my adventure, because terrible school, grammar school was horrible, hated it. But punk was starting to happen. Well, pub rock, Eddie and the Hot Rods, Dr. Feelgood, and writing on the desk appeared that I was using after this other guy. Anyway, he was a prefect. He approached me and said, "Were you writing on the desk?" And I thought, fucking hell. I thought he's probably into music, this guy, and I did think he was writing some of the other stuff. And it turned out that he was a couple of years older than me, and that was Dave McCulloch. So everybody was doing fanzines, and why don't we do one? Alternative Ulster. I remember we came up with this. I don't know why we called Alternative Ulster. It was a certainly attractive name to stiff little fingers.
They used it, didn't they? Yeah,
they used it. But so the first issue I've never seen again. It was only 50 copies done. We did them on A4 pages. And we called it number 7. The first one was called number 7, 50 issues of it. And it was printed up by New Hormond, Buzzcocks. We thought the Buzzcocks are the most independent-minded thing. This is an independent venture, because my dad was going to do it in his work, and I thought it's not really right. It probably compromises him if he's this nonsense that we're doing. And we sent the copy over to Manchester, and it was a done deal. It was the money for the printing and all was exchanged, and over it came in a fucking package, and 50. That was the first one, and then that was the only reason for me to go back into Belfast, because we had a fanzine. We'd find somewhere to find it, because Belfast to me was a scary place, really. No reason to go there for me, other than, and because of no music. You see a few shows which were cosmically brilliant. Dr. Feelgood. People talk about the Clash band gig galvanizing the community, but I think as many people that went on to become musicians in the Belfast scene and elsewhere were at the Dr. Feelgood were only number 1 for 1 week with Stupidity, and that was the week they played Belfast, and that was absolutely cosmically brilliant. But then the Clash gig was cancelled in October, and that ended up in the Clash's hotel bedroom, without the fanzine actually having been. The fanzine had gone off to Buzzcocks to get printed. Complete Control was the Clash single that was out, and it was almost as if the single was being played out in real time in Belfast that afternoon, because this show was going to happen, and then it wasn't going to happen. The man had stopped it, man. But they came back. They came back on the 17th of December, 1977, and I've not had any copies of this fanzine until the last 3 years. Friends sent me a couple. I hadn't seen it for years. In fact, because I've got a couple, I thought I'd try and get more. And last Christmas, I was on eBay for a different edition of it, and somebody beat me to buy what was 20p cover mount, 20p at the time for 52 quid. Too rich for my blood. My other half said
you're outbid for a copy of your own
magazine. That's rich, isn't it?
It's all handwritten, folks. It's actually no typewriters, and yes, that's quite an extensive interview done. I don't know. I don't think I recorded it. I'm sure I didn't record the thing. So it's sort of Nick Kent style things, like flattering quotes or whatever. But yeah, quite a long piece with Joe Strummer, who on the day that we got into the hotel room and the show didn't happen, was playing a role a bit like John Major in the interregnum before he became Tory party leader. He couldn't speak. He was necking thing, and he could. I think there was I think it was a convenient thing for him not to have to take part in an interview. So instead, my first ever question in an interview in person, I'd interviewed the Undertones on the phone because we heard there was this tape of this band in Derry that were great. We didn't hear the tape, we heard they were great. So we spoke to them on the phone and did a piece in the first, the one with 50 and 50 copies. And so we, the Clash were in the hotel room. Lots of herbal remedies were around, and they did carry. Anybody was kind of welcome to come into the Clash's hotel room, it seemed. And Mick Jones is holding court on the bed with a massive doobie, and so I've got a chance to interview the sort of happening band at the moment. I'm there. I was like looking at Mick Jones. What do you do in an interview? What the fuck do you ask these people? I'd read the magazines. You ask a question, they talk for fucking ages, big long quotes. I asked her, I was like, so what about the new album then? Because I'd read in the papers they were actually making a new album.
It's like Almost Famous, isn't it? Yeah, go on.
What about it? It's like, didn't know what to say. I told Mick Jones this like 40 years later when I was doing a piece about his rock and roll library thing that it travels around. I told him that his response, and he took a hit on his herbal remedy of the day and said, well, not much has changed there. Really.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, it kind of, once again, we've been talking about this a lot on these discussions. That the kind of the farcical thing about the rock interview is nobody actually has any questions for anybody. Really, what you want to do is just be with them, look at them, and then write about what they look like, what they act like, how they move around, all that.
Because no matter what questions you've got, they're probably never going to answer them, and they're just going to be evasive. And the most interesting thing is their mannerisms and their clothes and the people around them and how they carry on. It's because
the question, what about the new album? Well, what can he say anyway? I mean, they've only, you know what I mean? Oh, it's great.
It's terrific, and it's out, and it's available. Yeah.
The response, what about it, is a perfectly valid one.
So, Gavin, what else have you got?
So what else I've got is, the enemy then, as you say, I was writing for the enemy in Ireland, went over to England and started working freelance. I was told I would get enough money to live on. Then Danny Baker vacated the staff chair. And
all right, you got in there.
You come and work in the staff. I was like, oh, great. And the first major trip that I got to, the first time I went to America was with Joan Jett. Was
all right.
There's
that's good.
That's a lovely picture.
I always think that, much better to have had a camera than a pen, really. If I'd just taken a photo of everyone I met would be good. So the enemy give you great opportunities to travel the world and, meet your stars and your idols. And I think Danny Baker, because he was like off to the TV world, was maybe offered this piece. And I think other writers were maybe a bit annoyed that I got offered to go and interview Marvin Gaye. And it was the Midnight Love comeback album, and when you arrived in the Sunset Marquee Hotel, well, the day after you arrived, this came. It was an invite to the launch, and when you opened this, it came out in a sort of golden confetti showered out.
Really?
And the PR, Shirley Brooks, was our chaperone for the 3 days that we were there with Marvin. And this was an invite to Carlos and Charlie's, which El Provido was the little kind of quite sleazy Hollywood place. There's a lot of stuff about it on the internet. And Shirley Brooks, I was driving us around, and she had a tape in her car of the new Michael Jackson album, but she kept dangling it in our various journeys, but couldn't possibly play it. And when I went back to, did the piece and that, and then it was like, I think early New Year, 83, got Thriller to review. And I think possibly slightly piqued that I'd been prevented from hearing it. Thing. I said, I said various things, but one of them said, I won't sell as much as Off the Walls.
Oh, really?
in print, you can't be.
A lot of people did the same.
Hard to be wronger. Hard to be.
Seven of the 8 tracks were massive hit singles. I know, but a lot of people did the same.
Nobody would ever have thought. Well, didn't they have a playback of Thriller at Epic Records in Soho Square?
I remember reviewing it often.
And there weren't an awful lot of people there. Isn't that right? Was it Neil Tennant went from Smash Hits?
Yeah.
But there wasn't a huge amount
to
of
his credit, he came back and said it was really good.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, Gavin, what's that picture behind you?
Yes, give us the picture.
Behind you.
This one?
Yeah, I'm always interested in pictures. Yeah, go on. What you got there?
So that is a bit dusty, me, and probably I've seen this artist perform more times than any other artist, Van Morrison, and that was taken at the Albert Hall after a 1990 tour. I was actually in bed. At home. I wasn't at the show. Jane Houghton, the photographer who took the picture, was doing some work with Van, and she called me. She said, Van really wants you to come down at the show. I thought, oh, well, okay, I'll come down. And that was the result of me going. It was an after-show party, and
Is that worthy of the caption, Van Morrison sharing a joke with Gavin Martin?
Well, he was sharing a joke with everyone that night. I was quite happy.
Surely a rare occasion.
We had spent the last night he'd played Belfast the week before, and I had gone over to review it, and completely by chance found myself in the bar with an old friend of Van's from school days who had given up drinking, and his only real catchphrase seemed to be, because Van and I were between, tempestuously arguing about various things, or just exchanges got heated, shall we say. And when they got too heated, this guy would stand up and go, no, 25 years in the music business, you can't argue with that.
Fair enough.
It's a good name for his book. You can't argue with that. Oh, well. So what else have you got? You got one last thing. What have you got? Your climactic item.
Okay, climactic item. So this is... I've got... this here's... people say, oh, you got Willie Nelson to sign it, but it's not actually Willie Nelson. It's Always On My Mind album, and it's... Wayne Carson Thompson, the late Wayne Carson Thompson. I went for a curry with Wayne Carson Thompson and David Hood as a result of being invited. This was David Hood's upside down calling card. And John, my mate John Seven, phoned me up one night and said, you want to come for a curry with my band? He's a Nashville producer in London. And I said, well, sure. And Wayne Carson Thompson sort of wrote 3 of my favorite songs, Always On My, well, a third of Always On My Mind, and The Letter and Soul Deep.
The Letter, of course, yeah. And David Hood was a bass player, wasn't he? Is that right?
The bass player he's one of the Swamper, Alabama.
Yeah. And
Wayne Carson, on the night, some of us were walking from the hotel, was an old street to Brickley, and 20-minute walk, whatever. I said to Wayne, are you walking round to the restaurant? And he said, son, if there ain't a fishing rod or a woman at the end of it, I ain't walking nowhere.
Fantastic.
Taxi and
So, what are you looking forward to doing most when this bloody war is over, or when we're allowed to go out and so forth?
Well, I'm quite happy doing what I'm doing.
We're all very suited to it, aren't we? Here we are, living at home, working at home. Life isn't very different, really.
I did have a kind of, with gigs. I just took one too many times. Last Bob Dylan played in Hyde Park, in the Golden Circle, VIP. Always beside someone whose life is far more interesting than what's happening on stage, and they're talking.
Yeah.
I just so annoys me.
Yeah.
So I've got watching. I've got BFI subscription. I've got all of the old Kurosawa, Bergman films to watch, and I got loads of music to listen to, and happy days.
And you got a sea to swim in, which we're terribly envious.
Which we're very envious.
You've got his own personal sea. Gavin,
you win.
You win.
Yeah,
it's been lovely catching up with you.
Gavin.
Excellent.
And we shall all come down and see you when this is all over, and have a dip
and have candy floss on the pier.
Some whelks or whatever.
We can have a game of water polo.
Oh yeah, there you go. I'm built for that. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay,
Nice to see you. Thanks, Gavin.
All right, cheers.
Thank you very much. Bye.